Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
The honeymoon suite in Positano cost me $8,000 for 3 nights. Marble floors, panoramic view of the Mediterranean, champagne chilling in crystal buckets. Everything perfect for my new wife, Sarah. Everything except her mouth. My ex would have gotten me the penthouse suite, she whispered as we stood on the balcony, her wedding dress still hanging in the closet behind us. I'm Jake Morrison, 42 years old, security consultant, ex-Army. I've defused bombs in Afghanistan and negotiated with terrorists in Somalia. But nothing prepared me for that sentence from my wife of exactly 6 hours. Really, I said, keeping my voice level. Your ex would have done better? Sarah shrugged, sipping her champagne, like she hadn't just detonated our marriage. I'm just saying, Tommy always went all out. This is nice, but Tommy, her ex-boyfriend who sold insurance and lived in his mother's basement until age 35. The same Tommy she claimed was boring and had no ambition when she dumped him for me 2 years ago. Well then, I said, walking back into the suite. Let me fix that problem right now. I pulled out my phone and called the front desk. This is Jake Morrison in the honeymoon suite. I need to check out immediately. Yes, tonight. Charge everything to my card. Sarah's face went white. Jake, what are you doing? I was already packing my bag, throwing clothes in with military precision. I'm making sure you never have to settle for second best again. You can call Tommy from the lobby. I'm sure he'll wire you money for the penthouse. You can't be serious. We just got married. I pulled the annulment papers from my carry-on bag. Yes, I'd brought them. Call it intuition or paranoia, but 20 years in security teaches you to prepare for every scenario. I'd had my lawyer draw them up before we left, just in case. My gut had been telling me something was wrong for weeks. Sign these, I said, placing them on the marble table. I'll file them when I get home. Sarah stared at the papers, like they were written in hieroglyphics. Jake, I was just making conversation. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything. I zipped up my bag and headed for the door. Oh, and Sarah, I'm canceling your credit cards, all of them. The joint account, too. You've got about 30 minutes before they stop working. Her face went from white to red. You bastard! You can't leave me here with no money. Watch me. I paused at the door. Call your parents. Or better yet, call Tommy. Maybe he'll upgrade you to first class. I walked out, leaving my wife of 6 hours standing in her silk negligee, holding annulment papers, in a foreign country where she didn't speak the language. The elevator ride down felt like the longest minute of my life, but also the most liberating. The hotel concierge looked surprised when I handed over my key card at midnight. Sir, is everything all right? Your wife? We'll be checking out separately, I said. Different flight, different life. I caught the last flight to Rome, then the first connection to Boston. 18 hours later, I was back in my downtown apartment, looking at the city skyline and wondering how I'd gotten married to a woman who was already comparing me to her ex before our wedding night was over. My phone buzzed constantly during the flight. Sarah calling from the hotel room, then from the lobby, then from what sounded like a police station. I didn't answer. Let her figure it out. She was a successful real estate agent, always bragging about her problem-solving skills. Here was a problem to solve. The apartment felt different when I walked in. Cleaner, quieter. I poured myself a scotch and sat down at my desk to write the first entry in what would become my revenge journal. Day 1. Marriage lasted 6 hours. Wife's first mistake was mentioning her ex. Her second mistake was thinking I wouldn't do anything about it. She's about to learn that I don't make idle threats. 3 days later, Sarah made it home. Her parents had wired her money for a commercial flight, coach class. She looked like she'd been through a blender when she showed up at my apartment. Jake, we need to talk. No, we need lawyers. I already filed the papers. She pushed past me into the apartment. You humiliated me. The hotel staff was laughing. I had to beg strangers for help. You humiliated yourself. I just provided the opportunity. Sarah's face twisted into something ugly. You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, congratulations, Jake. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Sarah moved back in with her parents, but she didn't go quietly. Within a week, she'd hired a lawyer and started what she called her campaign to destroy Jake Morrison. She posted on social media about her abusive husband who abandoned her in a foreign country. She told our friends I'd had a psychotic break. She even filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau about my security consulting firm, claiming I was unstable and dangerous. What Sarah didn't know was that I'd been recording our conversations for months. Not illegally. Massachusetts is a two-party consent state, but my lawyer had taught me some tricks. Every argument we'd had in public places, every dinner conversation in restaurants, every fight in the car, all perfectly legal to record with the right equipment. I also had something else Sarah didn't know about. My business partner, Rick Santos. Rick was my old Army buddy, a former intelligence specialist who now ran background checks for corporate clients. Rick owed me his life from a firefight in Kandahar, and he'd been suspicious of Sarah from day one. I never liked her, Rick said when I called him. Too smooth, too perfect. Women like that always have secrets. Find them, I said. Rick's investigation took 2 weeks. What he found was better than I'd hoped for. Sarah hadn't just been comparing me to her ex. She'd been in contact with him the entire time we were together. Text messages, emails, even a few phone calls the week before our wedding. But the real prize was her best friend, Lisa Chen, a PR specialist who worked for the mayor's office. Lisa had been helping Sarah plan what they called Operation Upgrade, a systematic plan to marry me for my money, then divorce me within 2 years, and take half of everything. The text messages Rick found were incredible. Sarah, Jake's so gullible. He actually thinks I love him. Lisa, just remember the plan. 2 years minimum for maximum payout. Massachusetts divorce law is very friendly to wives. Sarah, I can't wait to get rid of him. Tommy and I are going to buy a house in California with Jake's money. Tommy, the insurance salesman. They'd been planning to get back together all along. I printed every message, every email, every phone record. Then, I started planning my response. The first strike came during Sarah's open house at a luxury condo downtown. She was trying to rebuild her real estate career after the honeymoon incident had damaged her reputation. I waited until the place was packed with potential buyers. Then, I made my entrance. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, walking into the living room with a tablet in my hand. I'm Jake Morrison, and I have some important information about your sales agent. Sarah's face went white when she saw me. Jake, what are you doing here? Providing full disclosure, I said, connecting my tablet to the big screen TV she'd set up for her presentation. I think potential clients should know who they're dealing with. The screen filled with screenshots of Sarah's text messages, the Operation Upgrade messages, the conversations about my money, the plans to get back together with Tommy. As you can see, I continued in my best briefing voice, Ms. Sarah Morrison, though she's going back to her maiden name Patterson, has some interesting views on honesty and commitment. The room erupted. Potential buyers started laughing, taking pictures with their phones. Sarah's broker, a stern woman named Margaret Walsh, looked like she wanted to crawl under the marble countertop. These are fake, Sarah screamed. He's stalking me. He's having a breakdown. The metadata is all here, I said calmly, switching to the technical details screen Rick had prepared. Timestamps, IP addresses, phone records, everything authenticated by a licensed private investigator. I handed out business cards to everyone in the room. If anyone needs security consulting services, I'm very thorough, as you can see. Sarah tried to grab the tablet from me. I held it over my head. At 6'2", I had 8 inches on her. She jumped for it like an angry cat, which made for even better photos for the buyer's social media posts. Jake Morrison, you are a dead man, she screamed as I walked out. Not yet, I called back, but your career might be. Margaret Walsh fired Sarah the next day. The story spread through Boston's real estate community like wildfire. Patterson's revenge disaster became legendary among agents. Sarah's professional reputation was destroyed. But I wasn't done. Not even close. The fallout from the open house incident split our social circle down the middle. Some friends thought I'd gone too far. Others thought Sarah had gotten exactly what she deserved. The ones who sided with Sarah became my targets. The leader of Sarah's support group was my former best friend, Mike Thompson. Mike and I had been friends since college, best man at each other's weddings, godfather to each other's kids. But Mike had always had a thing for Sarah, and now he saw his chance to play white knight. Mike called me 3 days after the open house incident. "Jake, we need to talk. What you did was completely out of line." "Which part? Exposing her lies or defending myself?" "You humiliated her in public. That's not the Jake I know. The Jake you knew was being played for a fool. The Jake you're talking to now has his eyes open." Mike sighed. "Look, Sarah made mistakes, but abandoning her in Italy was cruel. And that stunt at the open house was just vindictive." "Vindictive?" I laughed. "Mike, she was planning to take me for half my assets from day one. She never loved me. It was all a con game." "Even if that's true, you should have handled it better, like an adult." That's when I realized Mike wasn't just defending Sarah. He was positioning himself as her next target. Mike had been divorced for 6 months. His ex-wife had taken him to the cleaners, and he was lonely. Sarah was playing the victim perfectly, and Mike was eating it up. "You're sleeping with her," I said. It wasn't a question. Silence on the other end of the line. "Mike, you pathetic idiot. She's using you just like she used me." "Go to hell, Jake. Sarah's twice the person you'll ever be." He hung up. Within an hour, I got similar calls from 3 other friends. Dave Chen, Lisa's husband, which explained his position, Jennifer Walsh, no relation to the broker, and Tom Rodriguez from my gym. All of them had bought Sarah's victim story. All of them thought I was the villain. Fine, and if they wanted to play sides, I'd show them what a real villain looked like. Rick's investigation expanded to include my former friends. What we found was fascinating. Mike Thompson, the righteous defender of poor Sarah, had been cheating on his ex-wife for 2 years before their divorce. Dave Chen was embezzling from his construction company. Jennifer Walsh was having an affair with her boss. Tom Rodriguez was selling steroids out of the gym. Everyone had secrets. Everyone had vulnerabilities. I started with Mike because his betrayal hurt the most. Mike worked as a financial advisor for a prestigious firm downtown. His client list included several of my corporate security clients. I called each of them personally. "Hi, this is Jake Morrison from Morrison Security. I wanted to give you a heads up about some potential issues with your financial advisor, Mike Thompson." I didn't lie or make false accusations. I simply provided facts. Mike's gambling problem, which had contributed to his divorce, his recent poor investment choices that had lost clients' money, his new relationship with a woman who was currently involved in a messy annulment proceeding. "I'm not saying Mike is dishonest," I told each client. "I'm just sharing information that might be relevant to your business relationship." Within a week, Mike had lost 4 major clients. His boss called him in for a review. His perfect post-divorce life was crumbling. Dave Chen was easier. I sent his company's HR department an anonymous tip about his creative bookkeeping, along with copies of invoices that didn't match his reported expenses. The IRS got the same information. Jennifer Walsh discovered that her affair partner's wife had received detailed photos of their hotel meetings. Tom Rodriguez found health inspectors conducting surprise visits to the gym, along with DEA agents asking questions about supplement sales. I didn't break any laws. I didn't plant evidence or make false accusations. I simply made sure the right information reached the right people at the right time. My former friends got the message. Mike called first. "You son of a bitch, you destroyed my career. Your gambling and bad investments destroyed your career. I just helped speed up the process." "This isn't over, Jake." "Yes, it is. Unless you want me to share the really interesting stuff I found." Mike's voice got quiet. "What stuff?" I had photos of Mike's gambling debts, including IOUs to some very unpleasant people in South Boston. Mike's financial problems were worse than even his ex-wife knew. "Stay away from Sarah," I said. "Stay away from me. Rebuild your life somewhere else, and we'll call it even." Mike moved to Florida 2 weeks later. The others fell in line quickly after that. Dave Chen stopped returning Sarah's calls. Jennifer Walsh blocked her on social media. Tom Rodriguez suddenly became very busy whenever Sarah wanted to meet for coffee. Sarah found herself alone, unemployed, and running out of allies. But she still had one card to play: her family. And that's when things got really interesting. Sarah's brother, Danny Patterson, was everything I despised about entitled rich kids. 35 years old, never worked a real job, lived off a trust fund from his grandfather's textile fortune. Danny had always resented me because I'd made my own money while he'd inherited his. When Sarah called for backup, Danny was eager to play the role of protective big brother. The confrontation happened at Murphy's Tavern, an upscale bar near downtown Boston where Danny liked to hold court with his trust fund friends.
I was drunk. I didn't know what I was doing.
Drunk? I have everything on video.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
He'd called me, demanding a meeting to settle this like gentlemen. I knew it was a setup, but I was curious to see what Sarah's family had planned. Danny was waiting in a corner booth with two of his prep school buddies, James Whitmore III and Charles Chip Vandenberg. Old money names, new money attitudes. They looked like they were auditioning for a country club catalog. "Jake!" Danny stood up with fake enthusiasm. "Thanks for coming. We need to talk about Sarah." I sat down across from them, keeping my back to the wall out of habit. "What about Sarah?" "What you did to her was unacceptable," James said, leaning forward. "Abandoning her in Italy, destroying her career, turning her friends against her. It stops now." "Or what?" I asked. Chip smiled like he thought he was intimidating. "Or we make your life very difficult. We have connections, Jake. Lawyers, judges, business leaders. We can destroy your little security company overnight." I looked at the three of them. Soft hands, expensive clothes, never been in a real fight in their lives. "You think you can threaten me?" "We're not threatening," Danny said. "We're explaining reality. Sarah made a mistake, maybe several mistakes. But she's family, and we protect family. She tried to steal half my assets through fraud? That's not a mistake, that's a felony." "Prove it in court," James said. "Oh, wait, you can't. Because you'll never get that far. We'll bury you in legal fees before you can say annulment." The bartender, a thick-set guy named Patrick, who I'd known for years, was watching our table carefully. Patrick was ex-Marine, and he could smell trouble brewing. "Here's what's going to happen," Danny continued. "You're going to apologize to Sarah publicly. You're going to pay her a settlement for the emotional damage you caused. And you're going to stay away from her and our family." "And if I don't?" Chip pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was me leaving my apartment building that morning. "We know where you live, where you work, where you eat breakfast. We can make your life very uncomfortable." That's when I started laughing. Really laughing, the kind that makes people nervous. "You think you're scaring me?" I stood up, and all three of them instinctively leaned back. "Danny, you've never been in a fight in your life. James, you got kicked out of Harvard for cheating on your economics final. And Chip, your daddy's law firm is being investigated by the FBI for money laundering." Chip's face went white. "How did you—" "I'm a security consultant, you moron. I investigate threats for a living." "Did you really think I wouldn't run background checks on Sarah's family?" I pulled out my own phone and started reading. Danny Patterson, arrested for cocaine possession in 2019. Charges dropped thanks to Daddy's connections. James Whitmore III, currently being sued by his ex-business partner for embezzling $40,000 from their startup. Charles Vandenberg, suspended from the Massachusetts bar for 6 months last year for ethics violations. Danny stood up, his face red with anger. "You son of a bitch." I grabbed his wrist before he could swing at me, applying just enough pressure to make him wince. "Sit down, Danny. Before you do something you'll regret. Let go of me." "Gladly." I released his wrist, and he stumbled backward into his chair. "Now listen carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. Sarah is a con artist who tried to steal my money. You three are pathetic trust fund babies who think money makes you tough. You don't scare me, you don't intimidate me, and you sure as hell don't threaten me." James started to say something, but I cut him off. "I have enough dirt on all of you to destroy your lives. Danny's drug habit, James's embezzlement, Chip's ethics violations. That's just the beginning. You want to play hardball? I invented hardball. I leaned forward, lowering my voice so they had to strain to hear me. Here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to go back to Sarah and tell her the cavalry isn't coming. You're going to stop harassing me, stop following me, and stop making threats. Because if you don't, I'm going to release everything I have on your entire family. You're bluffing, Chip said, but his voice shook. I pulled out a thick manila envelope and dropped it on the table. Danny's drug dealer's phone records, showing regular contact for the past 3 years. James's bank statements, showing mysterious deposits that don't match his reported income. Chip's client files, showing clear ethics violations that the Bar Association missed. All three of them stared at the envelope like it was a bomb. And that's just the preview, I continued. The full package includes photos, video surveillance, and witness statements. Everything legally obtained, everything admissible in court. Danny's voice was barely a whisper. What do you want? I want you to leave me alone. I want Sarah to accept the annulment and move on with her life. And I want all of you to understand that I'm not the victim here. I'm the guy who fights back. I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. Drinks are on me, gentlemen. Consider it a going-away present. As I walked toward the door, Danny called out, "This isn't over, Jake." I turned back, smiled, and said loud enough for the whole bar to hear, "Yes, it is. Unless you want everyone in Boston to know what's in that envelope." Patrick, the bartender, gave me a nod as I left. 3 days later, I heard through mutual friends that Danny Patterson had checked himself into rehab. James Whitmore had left town to visit family in California. Chip Vandenberg was taking a leave of absence from his law practice. Sarah's family reinforcements had retreated, but I still had one final move to make. 2 months after the bar confrontation, Sarah made one last desperate play. She'd found a new job at a small real estate firm in Cambridge, started dating a divorce lawyer named Kevin Murphy, no relation to the tavern, and was trying to rebuild her image as a survivor of domestic abuse. The domestic abuse angle was her masterstroke. No physical violence, no police reports, no medical records, just emotional abuse and abandonment. It was impossible to disprove and played perfectly with her victim narrative. Sarah gave interviews to local women's magazines about financial abuse and emotional terrorism. She started a blog called Surviving Narcissistic Abuse that gained a small but dedicated following. Kevin Murphy, her new boyfriend, was a slick operator who specialized in high-conflict divorces. He was helping Sarah build a case for a civil lawsuit against me for intentional infliction of emotional distress. They were seeking $2 million in damages. I had to admit, it was a smart strategy. Sarah had learned from her mistakes and was playing the long game. She'd positioned herself as the victim, found professional help, and was using the legal system as her weapon. Too bad for her. I was playing a longer game. The final confrontation took place at the Boston Harbor Hotel during the annual Women in Business networking event. Sarah was the featured speaker, telling her story of survival and empowerment to a room full of successful professional women. She'd been building toward this moment for months, her public comeback as an inspirational figure. I waited until she was halfway through her speech before making my entrance. "Excuse me," I said, walking into the ballroom with a briefcase in my hand. "I'm Jake Morrison, and I have some additional information about tonight's speaker." The room went silent. Sarah's face went white, then red, then white again. "Security," she called out. "Ma'am, I'm a licensed private investigator presenting evidence of fraud," I announced, showing my credentials to the event coordinator. "This is a legal matter of public interest." I walked to the front of the room and connected my laptop to the projection system. "Ladies, you've been listening to Sarah Patterson's story about surviving an abusive marriage. I'd like to show you the rest of the story." The screen filled with the text messages Rick had recovered, the Operation Upgrade plan, the conversations about taking my money, the coordination with Tommy, her ex-boyfriend. But that was just the opening act. "These messages show Ms. Patterson's original plan to defraud me through marriage," I continued. But here's what she's been doing more recently." New slides appeared. Sarah's social media posts from Italy, taken during our honeymoon disaster. She was smiling, taking selfies, posting about her amazing solo adventure, and finding herself. The timestamps showed these were posted while she was giving interviews about being abandoned and traumatized. As you can see, Ms. Patterson's version of events doesn't match the photographic evidence. She spent 3 days touring the Amalfi Coast, staying in luxury hotels, and documenting her empowerment journey for Instagram. The audience was murmuring now, pulling out phones to fact-check what they were seeing. But wait, there's more, I said, channeling my inner infomercial announcer. Ms. Patterson has also been running a very interesting side business. The next slides showed financial records. Sarah had been accepting donations through her blog and social media accounts. Thousands of dollars from women who believed her story and wanted to support a fellow survivor. She had also been charging for consultation services and survival coaching sessions. Ms. Patterson has collected over $50,000 in donations and fees based on her fictional story of abuse. That's not surviving, that's profiting. Sarah tried to grab the microphone from me. These are lies. He's stalking me. He's proving exactly what kind of monster he is. I handed her a legal document. This is a cease and desist order regarding your fraudulent fundraising activities. It's also a civil complaint for defamation, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. You're being sued for $3 million. The room erupted. Women were shouting questions, taking photos, demanding explanations. Sarah's new boyfriend, Kevin, pushed through the crowd, trying to reach the stage. "This is harassment," Kevin shouted. "We'll have you arrested." "For what? Presenting evidence of fraud at a public event? Good luck with that, counselor." I turned back to the audience. Ladies, I want to be clear about something. Real domestic abuse is a serious crime that destroys lives. Real survivors deserve our support and protection. What you don't deserve is to be conned by someone who's turned fake victimhood into a profitable business. Sarah was crying now, but they looked like tears of rage rather than sadness. "You bastard! You've ruined everything!" "No, Sarah. You ruined everything when you decided to marry me for my money. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Security finally arrived. Real security, not the event volunteers. But instead of escorting me out, they approached Sarah. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us. There are some police officers who want to speak with you about the fraud allegations." The Massachusetts Attorney General's office had been investigating Sarah's fundraising activities for weeks, based on complaints from donors who'd become suspicious. My presentation had just provided the final evidence they needed. As Sarah was led away in handcuffs, she screamed back at me, "This isn't over. I'll destroy you for this." "Actually," I called back, "it is over. Enjoy prison." Kevin Murphy tried to follow Sarah out, but 2 FBI agents stopped him at the door. Turns out Kevin had been helping Sarah launder the donation money through his law firm's client accounts. He was looking at disbarment and federal charges. The event coordinator approached me as the room cleared out. "Mr. Morrison, that was quite a presentation." "I believe in truth in advertising," I said, packing up my laptop. "The women here tonight, they're going to want to verify everything you showed them. Everything is documented and verified. I've provided copies to the authorities and the media. Your members can access the public records themselves." 6 months later, Sarah pled guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. She got 18 months in federal prison and was ordered to pay full restitution to her victims. Kevin Murphy was disbarred and got 3 years for his role in the money laundering scheme. Danny Patterson completed his rehab program and moved to California, where he got a job at a nonprofit organization working with addiction recovery. James Whitmore paid back the money he'd embezzled and started working at his family's business. Chip Vandenberg left the legal profession and became a real estate agent. Tommy, Sarah's ex-boyfriend, sent me a thank you card. Apparently, Sarah had been planning to take him for everything he was worth too once she finished with me. I kept the thank you card framed in my office, right next to the newspaper clipping about Sarah's sentencing. Both served as reminders that sometimes the best revenge is simply telling the truth. My security consulting business thrived after the publicity from Sarah's case. Apparently, exposing fraud and protecting clients from con artists was exactly the kind of reputation I wanted in my industry. I never remarried, but I dated occasionally. I always ran background checks first, though. Call it paranoia, but some lessons are worth learning. Sarah was released from prison after 14 months for good behavior. She moved back in with her parents and got a job as a cashier at a grocery store. Her criminal record made it impossible to return to real estate or any other profession requiring a license. Last I heard, she was dating a guy who worked in the store's deli department. He seemed nice enough, honest work, no criminal record, no trust fund. Maybe Sarah had finally learned to appreciate what she had instead of scheming for what she wanted. Or maybe she was just planning her next con. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I was sitting in my office one evening, looking out at the Boston skyline, when Rick called. "Jake, you see the news about Sarah?" "What now?" "She's engaged, to the deli guy. Apparently it's true love this time." I laughed. "Good for her. Maybe she's actually changed." "You think so?" I thought about it for a moment. "Rick, do you know what the best part of revenge is?" "What's that?" "When it's over, you get to move on with your life. Sarah Patterson is somebody else's problem now." I hung up the phone and poured myself a scotch. Outside my window, the city lights sparkled like diamonds on black velvet. Somewhere out there, Sarah was probably planning her next wedding, dreaming of her next fresh start. But that was her story now. Mine was just beginning.